I'm focused on his spirit cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost was with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Hello. Welcome to Black Teen News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about some of this media covering of the terrorist attack that happened over the weekend in New York, or attempted terror attack from some young men who apparently pledged allegiance to ISIS and had a bomb that they threw out and could have done a lot of harm, and their intention was to do more harm than like the Boston Marathon. But I haven't been streaming and have kind of been off the grid a little bit the past weekend or so. But I saw a headline on Sunday and I thought it was very peculiar because I hadn't heard about what had happened, and my first impression was very strange about what was going on, and I think it's done on purpose. And the framing has continued on even after the facts have been known about what happened. So I want to talk about that. We'll probably touch on some other things as well. There is a article about James Tallarico that came out, but we'll probably touch on that tomorrow. There's development as far as things going on at the war in Iran, and there was a horrific story that came out about a girls' school that had been blown up, and there's reporting that it was the US who did it. And from my understanding, the US is still investigating. It looks like they did do it. If that is the case, I would really appreciate some accountability. And I'll briefly talk about that, but I want to give them full time to own up to it. But when bad things happen, I do think it's very important that there is accountability. So we'll briefly touch on that, but the media is very, very peculiar today. I have been MIAs, as I announced last week. I think my last show was Thursday, I think. We had our very successful event on Friday for the Pregnancy Crisis Center, Crossroads Pregnancy Crisis Center. And so we did a gala. We invited people out. We sang, we worshiped, prayed for people, all kinds of stuff. And people donated funds for this Pregnancy Crisis Center. We're going to get diapers and all sorts of different things that the Pregnancy Crisis Center has need of, and then we're going to donate them. We also do another fund, a drive in the summer for the Pregnancy Crisis Center, and then we bring them all the stuff. So it was a wonderful night. I'm grateful to everyone who came out, grateful to everyone who did donate and participate. I know there are people who couldn't come who just still decided to go online and donate. So I really, really appreciate it. And I thank you all for that. But we had a really wonderful night. So that was great. That happened on Friday. So I didn't stream that day because I just, we were preparing for that particular night. And so I alerted you guys that I probably would not be streaming until today, which I do apologize for being late. But the reason being that we did have a death in the family. And so I was at a funeral yesterday, and the funeral was for my aunt, my mother's sister, who passed away from a stroke. And you guys know that my mother passed away in 2024 in September. So, my aunt had been having some health issues for a while. She had a stroke and didn't recover from it. My mom was a sudden death. So that, we did not expect. So, it hit hard in different ways, like, just thinking about my cousins losing their mom, and we just lost our mom, and this is my mom's sister. So that was hard to deal with. But also, I don't know, when I know I'm like mid 30s, but until people experience death at obviously different times of their lives. I've gone to many funerals, had grandmothers who passed away, and other folks. And I've been to a lot of funerals, I think, just in general as a person, because just PK, going to different funerals for people involved in the church, have a pretty big family, going to different funerals and stuff. And sometimes you're just invited to sing or speak, or just people I've known in the political sphere. Sometimes some funerals I've gone to. And I've gone to funerals where you know you're close to the person, and it did really hurt. But I don't know, my mom dying, that was like a shock to the system, as far as, I don't know, you just kind of have this idea that nothing's bad, really bad's going to happen, and then the worst thing that could happen happens, and it just kind of shakes your world a bit. So I just took a minute to readjust, but I guess you kind of never get over that feeling, because you're like, oh, the worst kind of things can happen. So when you get older, especially as you start to get older, you think about your parents and how much longer they'll have on this earth, and then your aunts and your uncles, and they're obviously older than you, so you start pondering, like, how much longer do they have. I'm so sorry to be morbid today, but I'm just reflecting. But I don't know, I think the thing that really I don't know, kind of hit the most is just thinking about this group of siblings just losing each other. And you know because they already lost a brother, then they lost a sister, and then they um lost my mom, and now the last sister. And then there's three I have three uncles left on my mom's side. And one is, you know there's the baby, and then there's the eldest. Are they the eldest boys? I think the eldest. I mean, my uncle Bernard is definitely the oldest, but you know, just like people are moving on, and then just like it'll just be a terrible day. When I guess I have to know that particular pain. So it's just dealing with those feelings was a lot. I still kind of feel a little emotionally heavy, I guess, as I ponder this a bit. But I thank you for being patient. It was nice to be with family, spend the day with my, siblings, and we went to the repast and stuff, and spent time with my cousins and my uncles and so on. So that was nice. And I guess it's good to get back in the swing of things and some normality. And we get to talk about how stupid CNN is today. So that's cool. that that's good stuff. So anyway, you guys can go to blacktnews.com, check a different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do, please consider leaving a donation on the site, because it does cost a stream. Run my site, all the good stuff. So you guys can support it. Very much appreciate it, and appreciate you guys. Just some side news. My cousin Gabriel, when you guys hear the intro of like the countdown, the Devil is a Liar song, that's my cousin Gabriel. He's a Christian rapper and minister, and he plays music. He's a very talented young man. But he just released a new album, so I just want to put it out there. You guys can search for him, Gabriel Redmond, but he just kind of goes by Gabriel. So his new album is available, and he's also going to be on the Dear Future Wifey podcast with his fiance very soon. So I'm excited about that for him. I'm assuming it's gonna go very well. Thank you. Someone said that you love the intro song. I did have, it's more like my countdown. I did have an intro that I worked really hard on. but I haven't played in a long time because there's some unsavory characters that I took a picture with, and I don't really want them in my intro anymore, and I just haven't remade it. So I've just been using like the countdown, which is probably fine. And he also like it's funny because one of the reasons why I also used it, besides the fact that I like it, I'm like, oh, I could promote my cousin. He does great work. He's a good guy. But also I didn't think it would get flagged on like social media, because before I'd have to enter into a code saying like, hey, I have the license to use this music for Black Tea every time I posted a video, every time, every episode. So so when it got to like the end of the month, I would just be on YouTube just appealing copyright stuff. I don't know why I couldn't preemptively just say, hey, I have permission to do that, to use this, but I don't know. So on Facebook though, it does get flagged. So but it gets flagged and hopefully he's getting money from it. Because I don't always feel like just going in there and just saying, hey, I have permission to use this, which I do have permission to use it, but he does great work. So anyway, you guys can go check him out on iTunes and Spotify, and listen to the streams and so on. But he's also on TikTok and Instagram and other places like that. So I'm happy for him. So I'll probably see him tonight at Bible study and get some more details, I guess, so I can just kind of put that out for him. But I want to show my appreciation for him because he does good work. He does good work. So anyway, on Saturday there was an attack, or an attempted attack, in New York, and I have been kind of zoned out. I was not zoned out, but just maybe off the grid is. I'm not technically off the grid, but Saturday I was over my dad's house, and I was just really writing and working on a book and stuff. So I wasn't too online. And so as a matter of fact, I was listening to like repeatedly to like music from My Hero Academia, like the Run theme song. And I was just like typing. I was in a completely different zone. And on Sunday is when I started to see weird headlines about what happened in New York. Now, I already did a TikTok about this, and we're talking about it because there's a continuation, because Abby Phillips did something the other night on CNN that I was like, oh, I'm about to roast her for this. She did apologize, but it is interesting and still worthwhile talking about, because my first initial reaction when I saw this headline was they're trying to twist the story to make it seem as though Zohran Mamdani was the one who was targeted in this particular terrorist attack. So NBC New York had tweeted out, multiple arrests made after suspicious devices found outside Gracie Mansion, home of Mayor Zohran Mamdani, during anti-Islam rally and counter-protest. That was my first interaction with this particular story. And so I saw it on X, and so I saw a lot of people's reaction to the actual headline of what happened. So I looked it up, and there was a anti-Islam protest. And I showed up, I guess, for the counter protest. But someone who is pro-Islam and apparently pledged himself to ISIS attacked and threw a makeshift bomb. So that just kind of seems like that's relevant information, because I know there's only so much that you can put on a headline, but I guess when you are verified, you can actually put a lot. So there's that. And this news account is. But when you say, just talk about, oh, there's these suspicious devices found outside the mansion of Zohran Mamdani. I mean, technically this stuff is going on there, but that just happens to be where the protest was. It just really makes it seem like the intention is to not cover the story accurately, but give people the impression that the Muslim mayor is the one who was targeted and he is the one in danger. or even if he wasn't targeted, he's still the victim and in danger because of anti-Islamophobia. Is a vibe that I was getting from headlines like this, and it wasn't the only headline like it either. So I think Reuters and other news organizations had wrote really weird headlines that gave this false impression. So Andrew Colvett had wrote a few. Let me go ahead and share. And by the way, thank you to those of you who are watching live and those of you who are watching later. But I know so you guys can't see each other when you're like watching on different platforms, but I can see your comments both from like Facebook and YouTube. So I just want to shout out and say thank you for watching. So you had explosive device thrown outside NYC Mayor Mamdani's residence. So I mean that's I guess what happened, but better than the other article. New York City police identified device outside Mamdani's home as explosive. So they are explaining what happened, but there's just some context that is missing. Is missing. Don't you think? Like if Obama, let's say Obama was the president right now, and there was some Christian nationalist or something involved, and there was a bomb or so, I just feel like the headlines would be more detailed about, I don't know, alleged ideology and what was going on. But I'm like, okay, I'm getting this impression from these headlines that this was the intention. But I guess I didn't want to outright 100% say it, even though I totally feel like that was the intention. Okay. So then Abby Phillips was on CNN the other night, and I do want to again say that she ended up apologizing for this. But here's what Abby Phillips said.
Two Republicans say Muslims don't belong here after an attempted terror attack against New York's Mayor Zohran Mamdani, and the House Speaker Mike Johnson says nothing really to condemn those comments. Another special guest is going to be with us at the table when we come to.
So that's not what happened. That's not what happened. So when I saw this last night, I'm like, okay, those headlines that were trying to give me this impression that Zohran Mamdani was the target of these attacks, that must have been what they were trying to do, because then you have Abby Phillips who's outright saying it on CNN. Now, having crazy headlines a few days ago maybe is one thing. Saying it on CNN a couple days removed, and we know that there's video of these going around and him doing like signals to ISIS, and we know they're saying Allah Akbar at the time when this all went down. It's just, how does something like this happen? Now, she did apologize. As I said, she did, and issued a correction. So I guess people are giving her kudos to her for that. And saying, oh, don't be too harsh, but like we can offer forgiveness or grace for that kind of apology, for apologizing after making that kind of mistake, especially because she's reading like a teleprompter, and it's probably leading out, and she's reading off of it, and so someone else wrote that script. It wasn't her. It's someone else's quote unquote error. How do mistakes like this happen, though? How do mistakes like this happen? Like that headline that I read, that I first saw, that happened, let's see, on the 7th. So the 7th actually was Saturday, okay? trash headline. I didn't see it till Sunday, but at least it's a trash headline on the day. So there's some people should report accurately when things happen to the best of their ability. So I don't want to give them a total pass, but it's kind of more understandable. Okay. Today is Wednesday. Today is Wednesday. Whoever wrote that script shouldn't have wrote that script, obviously. This is a news channel. It's not fanfiction.net. It's not an op-ed. Like, you're writing a news script for a news organization. So how did that happen? How did that happen? And that's after CNN had an article that was very strange. They had a headline that was very weird. Okay. 2 Pennsylvania teenagers crossed into, this is New York. I mean CNN reporting. 2 Pennsylvania teenagers crossed into New York City Saturday morning for what could have been a normal day, enjoying the city during abnormally warm weather. But in less than an hour, their lives would drastically change as the pair would be arrested for throwing homemade bombs during an anti-Muslim protest outside of Mayor Zoran Mamdani's home. Here's what we know so far. This is really strange. This is so weird. Why would you make a tweet like that? Like, oh, just kiddos of circumstance. It just kind of happened to them. It just kind of happened upon the terrorism. You know, it's just one of those zany adventures, guys. It's so weird. And then in their article, now they did change the article for a while when you were still Googling or whatever, it would still pop up. So they did change it, but let me read it. 2 Pennsylvania men on Saturday followed the route taken by thousands as they crossed the George Washington Bridge into New York City, but less than an hour later, their trajectory took a dark turn as they were arrested for throwing homemade bombs during an anti-Muslim protest outside of Mayor Zoran Mamdani's home. Amir Balat, 18, and Ibrahim Kuyumi, 19, were charged Monday with providing material support to a terrorist organization and using a weapon of mass destruction, among other charges, after they threw 2 improvised explosive devices. Why would you write it like that? just I don't know, write a straight laced article. You're CNN, you know, you're CNN. So people are obviously roasting them for good reason and bringing up some of their greatest hits. Remember this? Of course you do. Fiery but mostly peaceful protest after police shooting. This one is probably my favorite of all time. I don't know how you can top something like this. But mostly peaceful protests. Okay, because it's like they knew it was bad, so they had to acknowledge it was fiery. So they could say, like, we're still objective, so we have to add that in there. But then they still had the audacity to go ahead and call it mostly peaceful. So it's just weird. It's just weird. But this was a time when you had people on CNN, their actual hosts, saying, tell me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful. That was what, Chris Cuomo had said. And obviously, the protests are supposed to be peaceful, right? This one got somebody a lot of money. Video shows a crowd of teenagers wearing Make America Great Again hats taunting a Native American elder after Friday's Indigenous Peoples March at the Lincoln Memorial. Now, what's crazy about this? I guess what's crazy about all of them is you could just literally watch what's happening. You literally just watch what's happening. This young man who people said had a punchable face for some reason. You know, he was just politely smiling, just being respectful, as this Native American man was all up in his face, dancing and loud in his face. This kid did nothing to warrant the amount of hatred and think pieces that were inspired by just him standing there smiling in a red hat. And probably being white. Come on, because this is a that particular age and time where that was a particularly bad thing, I suppose. He didn't do anything wrong. He just stood there, and people hated this kid. This was an iconic headline. Another one. Chris Cuomo returns from his basement quarantine. That was kind of funny too. Not as good as the other ones, but just to show you how fake, you know, all these people were. They acted like it was so dramatic. You staying in your basement, bro. And then of course, this is getting added to the collection of the 2 Pennsylvania teenagers who just, you know, they were having a normal day and all of a sudden they were terrorists. Woo. Very strange. These zany adventures. I think the reason why so many of these crazy things happen, and there's all these sorts of framing, is because of derangement syndrome. Trump derangement syndrome is one, but it's beyond Trump. I mean, the Trump derangement syndrome is pretty bad, but there are ideologues everywhere. And journalists should be professional. They should report the news, and they shouldn't let their feelings get in the way. Unfortunately, that happens all the time. It happens to the best of us. Sometimes you gotta, you know, when you see a meme or something, you know, someone claims something, there's a short snippet video, you have to ask yourself, is there a reason why this is only 3 seconds long? And what happened after this? What happened before this? What's the context of this? You know, you can't just be so in your own feelings that you just hop on, you know, what a bunch of other people are retweeting. And I've had to learn, unfortunately, that a lot of big accounts, especially a lot of big MAGA accounts, obviously this is true for people on the left, but I'm just telling people on my side of the aisle that there are people with large amount of followings on X and other places who aren't very responsible with their reporting. And I've seen them elevate particular stories that I'm like, man, that's not what happened. I know that's not true. I know they didn't do their due diligence. I know where they're getting the story from. Those people didn't do their due diligence. And so now I have to question what comes from these particular accounts, because clicks are what make people money. And that's what a lot of people care about. I'm not saying they don't have other values, but the truth to a lot of people take a back seat, especially it's not even just money for some people where that is like, oh, this is going to get me good engagement, why they post particular things without doing due diligence. Sometimes people are just kind of driven by that gut, like, oh yeah, this is what happened because they're the bad guys or they're the psycho liberal left or whatever, and we're going to just go ahead and pump this out because it's so crazy it must be true. Where sometimes it is the case that it's so crazy and it is true, but you should ask yourself, man, this is so crazy, is it actually true? I do appreciate when I share some things sometimes on Facebook and people are like, is this real? Because when you get to go back and say, yes, it is absolutely real, when it's something really crazy, you know, it's just really funny. Now, there are sometimes when people push back, like Alex Preddy, where people kept insisting that the video of him kicking out a taillight and all that stuff was AI. That was really stupid. That was annoying, guys, especially after it had been verified, because I wanted to make sure it was true too. So I was, even when I decided to post a video of it, at first I was still like, allegedly, just to like give myself some wiggle room. because a lot of people were reporting it were just like super right-wing sources, and I'm like, I don't trust just super right-wing sources. But then more came out, and I was like, okay, so I'm like telling people my sources as I'm pumping out this information, because I can make mistakes. I do make mistakes, but I don't want to obviously purposely make them and mislead my audience or share misinformation. I don't want to be part of the problem. So anyway, if I have enough sense to do that, and I'm a person with a website that I run by myself, my question is, what is wrong with CNN? What is wrong with CNN? What is wrong with NBC News? What is wrong with all these news organizations who keep making these mistakes, who keep getting so involved in their ideology that they can't report straight facts? And for what purpose? You may not like that there was an anti-Islam protest in New York, but people protest crap all the time. If you're going to say love is love and people have the right to love whoever they love, guess what? People have the right to not like who they don't want to like either, and to express that freely in the United States of America. They can't go and infringe upon you and your rights. They can't cause you bodily harm and things like that. You obviously can't storm a church to disrupt their First Amendment right. That's not appropriate. That's breaking of the law and stuff too. But if people want to go and have some kind of protest, I think they're entitled to do that. I really don't like people doing it outside of people's houses, though. I don't care if you're an elected official. I don't like it. People do it though. They go outside of mayor mansions. They obviously go out and protest outside of the White House. One of the times I went to go visit my sister when she was working in DC, I was like, man, there was a protest at the White House today. And she's like, there's protests at the White House literally every day. People will protest about something. They find some reason. They're not all huge protests or some big unruly protests, but some person every day is having some kind of demonstration outside of the White House and airing their grievances. It just happens all the time. So if someone wants to have an anti-Islam protest, they have the right to do that. They do. And if the media wants to be upset about that because they feel that that is a protected class and they want to protect Zohran Mamdani and et cetera, they can have their feelings, but they should not try to distort what actually happened. We need to know about the radicalization of people. How did this happen? How far does it go? The lawyers are trying to report, even though they grew up like a couple miles apart from each other, that they didn't even know each other. This is what Fox News was reporting, saying that Bucks County, Pennsylvania, 2 Pennsylvania men accused of plotting an ISIS-inspired terror attack in New York City were strangers before the alleged plot. An attorney for one of the suspects said Ibrahim Kayumi, 19, of Newtown, and 18-year-old Emir Balat allegedly threw live explosive devices, and it's not, they're just saying alleged for legal reasons, but just literal video of it, into the protest that was taking place outside Mayor Zohran Mamdani's Gracie Manor residence on Saturday after traveling from Bucks County to Manhattan, federal officials said. Balat's lawyer, Mehdi Ismadi, claimed to reporters that the two men didn't know each other prior to the attempted attack. They're strangers as far as I know. I'm saying they're from different parts of Pennsylvania. They're in different age groups. They are not known to each other. They do not live together. They do not have family or school ties. Though Balat is high school, and his attorney told reporters that he was finishing classes remotely. He's 18. He's finishing school remotely because he has only like 3 classes left to do. He's a senior. A district spokesperson told Fox News Digital that Balat is currently in the 12th grade, and he just ruined his whole life, obviously. And Kayumi graduated in 2024 from Council Rocks High School. They're not, it's different schools, but they're not that far apart in age, obviously. Spokesperson told Fox News that Bala attended Newshami High School until September 2025 before going remote. A prosecutor said the complaint that a series of pictures show the men handling the alleged bomb, which was later determined to have contained TATP that had nuts and bolts attached to the duct tape. NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch said Monday that the devices were real and capable of causing serious injury or death. This is being investigated as an act of ISIS-inspired terrorism. While this precinct station, after being arrested, Bala allegedly wrote and signed a pledge of allegiance to the Islamic State, according to the federal prosecutors. All prayers due to Allah, Lord of all worlds. I pledge my allegiance to Islamic State. Bala allegedly wrote, "We take action." So, we need to know how this kind of radicalization happens, for sure. Now, as far as people, the actual anti-Islam protests going on, if you have an issue with Islam, and I do, obviously I believe it's a false religion. What you can do is read your Bible, learn the Quran, learn about the Islamic dilemma, learn about Muhammad, learn about his life, that he's not some great upstanding moral character. Learn about the inconsistencies with the Quran, how it was not perfectly preserved. Learn apologetics. Be like David Wood, be like God Logic. Go, and other people who have taken up this mantle of being an apologist and taking it right to Islam. So, which is interesting because David Wood, which I've talked a lot about, but he worked for years trying to get his friend Nabil to convert from Islam to Christianity. And I don't know if you can find a podcast somewhere on YouTube, but if you listen to Seeking Allah Finding Jesus at the end of the book, they have reflections from different people, and at the very end, I think the very last thing is a podcast with Nabil and David talking about their experience, and going over the story about how Nabil was converted. And an interesting thing that happened, or that I learned, I guess, from that particular discussion, was that people were discouraging David from continuing to witness to Nabil, because he's like, okay, because they were saying, okay, well, you're a former atheist. Think of like how much time you could be spending with, I guess, other former atheists, and trying to convince them of the gospel. All this time that you're, dissecting Islam and all this other kind of stuff to get this one person to convert. If you spent the years you're spending on this one person and just outsourcing it to just other atheists, like that's they thought that was a better use of his time. And I just was so mortified to hear that, because I mean, one, David learned through that process how to really have conversations with people from the Islamic faith, and to get them to convert, and he has converted a lot of people. Nabil obviously led a lot of people to Christ himself, and he had such a short amount of time on earth after that, because he ended up dying, I believe, of stomach cancer. And so he had like 12 years to go full on, ministry. And he made the most of that time. So I feel like there should have been a second half to his book that was like 12 years of no longer a slave, or something, like a slave to sin. But if he would have just gave up, like, Nabil wouldn't be in glory right now, and then all the work that he had done wouldn't have happened. And there's still no guarantee that all that time spent witnessing to other people would have got other people saved. But it's not like David had to tell people that he believed that God put him into Bill's life, and he obviously did. And you have to trust where the Lord is leading you and not necessarily where people think you ought to be. Like this is a totally different example, but my mom, my dad, when he, was falling for her, he had some people around him that just kind of didn't see it. Not that they didn't see that his feelings were genuine and stuff, but as far as him being, like a preacher and stuff, my mom, she's very quiet. She doesn't like really to be seen. She does like to travel for vacation or something, but she's very much a homebody. She likes to go out to eat and stuff, but she doesn't like really traveling and stuff with my dad to like different churches and stuff and so on. But she liked to sit in the back. Eventually they got her like to sit on the second row. but she, when I was little, we used to just kind of sit at the back of the church. And she just, didn't really like to talk a lot, every so often. And it's not even so often, just rarely actually. She would maybe testify for 2 seconds. If you get, it was like pulling teeth. And some years before she passed, she did like lead one Bible study for us. And the year before she died, I don't think it was the same year. Maybe the year before, I did an interview with her. That was the most probably the church heard her talk in like one sitting. She just wasn't a talker. She could sing fairly well, but she wasn't a singer, you know. Not like the rest of us and stuff, not all of us, but like me and my other siblings that sang, to just, she's very chill, very in the back, and was fine just being support. Didn't want to be in the choir. Definitely wasn't choir director. Didn't do Sunday school, things like that. So people just didn't understand. To them, it didn't seem like, okay, this is the role of a preacher's wife. And my dad, he actually co-pastored the church with his mom, because this was a concern my mom and stuff had too, because she didn't want to do a lot of that stuff. And he's like, it's just, a lot of different stuff. He's like, my mom is doing. So she didn't really have to do a lot of things, I guess people had in their mind that she should have been doing. But what she did do is that she never allowed, she was never a hindrance to my dad. Never a hindrance. Any issues that we had as a family, they weren't because of her. Or any struggles that he had in his ministry definitely was never because of her. She had a really chill attitude, even when women were writing him love letters and all kinds of crazy stuff, he wouldn't read them. He would just give them to her, and then she would still go and smile on their face. She just had a very sweet spirit about her. And she obviously raised us, and instilled great values within us, taught us the value of praying, the value of having a peaceful home, working together, not allowing conflict to carry over to the next day. That was a big thing with her. If my dad needed to make a sacrifice for the ministry, a sacrifice for the church, needed to do something for the ministry, it was okay. If the Lord said this, we're going to go with what the Lord said. It wasn't a back and forth. It wasn't an argument. If she had an issue with my dad, she would say her piece, but then she would take it to the Lord, and and the Lord would relay the message a lot of times. And have, one time they were arguing, and my dad was mad about it still the next day. He's like, Lord, rebuke the devil on her. He's like, she's over it. Like, you need to get over it. Like, you're the problem. So she just really created a peaceful home. And she's really old school, as far as how she handled the home, took care of the home. She hated to cook though, but she could cook. But she would cook for her family. If you learned a dish though, she would like retire the dish though. She was like, okay, you're making the chicken Alfredo because I don't want to do it. But she found laundry to be relaxing. She, Would bring my dad his meals, and it just was really old school and just a real blessing to him and a blessing to the family. But a lot other people at the time when they were dating, they thought that, she wasn't out there, therefore she wasn't the right one. And maybe he was missing something. She was perfect for him and what he needed. And she was never an obstacle. She was always the helpmeet. And there's a lot of people who just can't see what the Lord is doing in your life, how he's placing people in your life, or the calling that you may have. And obviously, them getting together created me, my siblings, and so on. It all worked out. It all worked out for the good, But with Nabil and David, that took a lot of time. That took a lot of patience. It took a lot of learning. There were some growing pains that they had. Sometimes there was a big argument they got into when it came to Paul, because a lot of Muslims don't care for Paul because they think that, because they like Jesus, they don't think he's God, but they think he was a prophet and all this stuff, and they think that a lot of this confusion comes from Paul. So Paul is like their enemy. They always kind of rag on Paul and stuff, but Paul was very important to David spiritually and stuff, especially because David came from this violent background and tried to murder his dad and all this stuff. And so Paul, who was persecuting Christians and things like that, God turned his life around, and he, was just this great biblical figure to David. And so after they got to like a big argument, David was just like, we cannot have a blow up like this again, if we're going to preserve our friendship. So they were really, really good friends, and it ended up obviously paying off. So take the time. Take the time to learn, to read, to witness. And I don't know, marching down the streets, angry, chanting or whatever is what's going to inspire less radical people. I don't think that's going to be the thing that saves America. I think revival ultimately will be what saves America if it can be saved at all. Okay. Not your angry anti-Muslim protests. You're not angry anti-Islam protests. I understand people being upset and concerned about Sharia law and other things like that, but people aren't going to care about Sharia law if they're Christian. Okay. So, be like an apologist, learn your Bible, and if you don't know too much at first, talk about who Jesus is to you. I saw a great video today with God Logic, and he was talking to someone who newly converted, and he's like, well, I just realized that Jesus wasn't God and I don't want to go to hell. And God Logic was like, oh, they didn't tell you? And he pulled out some verses about how everybody goes to hell. And then Allah, will choose to take the believers or whatever out of it eventually, but he's like, everybody's going there. He's like, they didn't tell you that? So people are like, oh my gosh, you got to read the disclaimer when you decide to switch sides like that. But I thought that was fascinating. I hadn't seen someone like turn the tables like that before. I thought he would have a discussion about Jesus actually being God. And oh no, there's no guarantee that you're not going to hell, by the way. So I appreciate their ministry and what they do. And again, I think it's people like that who are going to initiate the best sort of change. Now there are plenty of Muslims who aren't who are obviously living in this country who aren't radicalized, who aren't going to pledge themselves to ISIS, who aren't going to blow themselves up, who aren't going to go hurt anyone, who are just going to work, living their lives, and there are Muslims who believe that Islam isn't a violent religion. There are people who frankly don't know a lot about it, I guess. So I don't want people to have like I don't know, a totally bigoted attitude, but I do obviously believe that the religion is false, and I want them to not follow a false religion. So um just do your part, but do it productively is what I'm saying. You don't have to lead with hate, you can lead with the truth. But even if people go out there and they do preach hate, and again, this is America, people have the right not to like you, not to like your beliefs. That's totally legitimate. If you have a belief system, people don't like it. That's not they'll treat Islamophobia like it's I don't know, racism or something. It's not the same. It's not the same. It's a not There's particular ideology and even political implications when it comes to the Islamic religion. So, it's totally legitimate to not like that kind of stuff and to voice your opposition to it. But not everyone who particularly identifies that way is fundamentalist, or if you want to say radicalized. But just do your part wisely. I do want to show you guys this AI video that was done. That's pretty funny, actually.
Oh no, friends, we don't throw things at people, even when we have very big feelings inside. Isn't that right, friends? Yeah. Friends, sometimes people do things that seem scary, but we have to ask ourselves, why were they feeling so many big feelings that day?
Were they bad guys?
No. They were just very confused friends.
We don't want you here. Go back to your country.
Well, that's not very nice to say, is it? Let's use nice, inclusive language, please. These boys could have grown up to become CNN journalists and uplifting members of this beautiful community. Because some mean people may feel like they didn't belong here, they made a little bitty mistake by throwing a bomb into a crowd of people. And that makes my heart very, very sad.
Yeah, so if you don't know who the AI lady is supposed to be, they're supposed to be Miss Rachel. Hopefully your children do not watch her. She is very big, though. Very big. Oh, Mom Johnny. I love when people mock her. Yay. Oh. So anyway, before I let you guys go, I know we're over at 5 o'clock. I mean, the 5 o'clock time. There was a report early with the conflict in Iran about a school being blown up. And it was believed or repeated, and I believed in stuff too, that it was a backlash kind of missile from Iran itself, and they are the ones responsible. New York Times did some reporting, and if you're like, oh, not the New York Times they caught Biden on them blowing up that aid worker when it came to Afghanistan. So it's not like they can't figure out something accurately. They were reporting that it looked like the United States was actually responsible for that. So Donald Trump was asked about it on a plane, and Pete Hegseth was with him. And so they asked Trump, and he's like, oh, it was Iran. We believe it was Iran who did that. And then they were like, Secretary Hegseth, is that true? And he said, we're still looking into it. And he said, Iran is the only one who targets civilians on purpose. So I'm like, oh, Trump spoke too quick. Hegseth understands that there's probably a good chance that we probably did this. So New York Times also reported some more. From my understanding, the White House had attitude of like, we'll release the report when we're like ready to say, and we're not gonna be bullied by the New York Times. And my thing about it is obviously it's a tragedy. Whether it was Iran that did it or we did it, it's a tragedy. And I understand that bad things happen in war, accidents happen in war. That doesn't make it okay when these things happen. It is a reality that they do happen. But it doesn't mean it's okay. Maybe it's a risk that people calculate into whether they still should continue. But it doesn't make it okay, you know? If, and I want to go ahead and give us the leeway, because maybe the Times is wrong. We'll see what the full report or whatever says. I really want us to own up to it. And I don't think it's something they'll let us get away with. So I would just like us to own up to it. And I would assume there'd be, I don't know, compensation or to the families or maybe something done. I don't know what all will be done on our part. Accountability. I would like accountability, them to investigate and see how these particular mistakes were made. When Biden, his administration killed that aid worker who was bringing home water canisters to the village, obviously that's a terrible thing. And they thought that they were killing ISIS, or terrorist or whatever, and that's not what happened. But what was so crazy to me, and why I mentioned it often, and I'll continue to mention it, is the fact that there was like no repercussions about Afghanistan and the pullout. And that was wild to me. And then they were saying, oh, the strike was true and saying a bunch of stuff that wasn't true at first. And then it came out and there was just no accountability from his administration. There's just incompetence on parade. The biggest sort of repercussion that there was that it exposed Biden as not being a cool ice cream grandpa. He was an old, angry old man who actually lacked a lot of compassion and was very impatient and perhaps obviously too incompetent to do his job. So politically, it really exposed him, and his poll numbers never quite recovered from that image being broken to a lot of people. But nobody was really held accountable. So I can accept that terrible mistakes are made. But I'm not okay if there's no accountability. So again, I'll give them the leeway. But there needs to be some accountability somewhere. And if Trump didn't know for sure, he obviously shouldn't have said on the plane. But when Seth, and presidents can say things that are wrong. They can say things that are wrong. But I knew then, I was like, there's probably a good chance that it was us. So war is a terrible thing. War is a terrible thing. Anyway, that's all I got to say to you guys today. Please go to blacktunions.com, check out different content on website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do, please consider leaving a donation on the website because it does cost a stream. Run my site, all that stuff. You guys can support. I very much appreciate you guys. Tomorrow, I'm probably going to go through, we'll see what happens in the news, but there was an article that David French wrote about, Tallarico. And they keep saying, like, people haven't read it and blah, 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 and they're not critiquing me correctly, and he's ignoring a lot of valid criticism about his particular writing. And Tallarico is really being used by people who hate Christians to dunk on Christians, not to Not because that people actually care about Christianity. It's really a tool to dunk on Christians. That's why so many people who aren't Christian keep propping him up. But you know, a lot of people will claim that they don't want, you know, religion involved in politics, and then they get someone like him who says you can't call yourself a child of God and like put out greenhouse gases or something crazy like that. So stuff has to continue being called out. Unfortunately, Tallarico is the candidate for Senate in Texas, and they are trying to flip that blue. That will have like terrible repercussions if they did manage to flip it blue. So unfortunately, he's going to be a big topic of conversation, and he's going to get a lot of money donated to him. He's going to get a lot of airtime. He's going to he's going to be used to try to attack Christianity. So he's going to be a big topic of conversation up until November. He just is. So buckle your seatbelt and get ready for it. Anyway, God bless you guys, and I will see you on tomorrow.